This is Aerogel. It holds the world record for the lightest solid known to man. It was developed by NASA to insulate equipment from the frigid temperatures of space, and it can contain up to 99% air.
And this is a jacket full of aerogel insulation.
And this is Down, nature's miracle insulation, the lightest, warmest, most compressible insulation that is naturally occurring. This is what NASA was trying to outperform when they made Aerogel. The question is, did they succeed? Is Aerogel really better than Down? Well, today we're going to find out. So Down is known for three things. It's light, it's warm, and it's highly compressible. This makes it perfect for backpacking or any activity where space and weight are at a premium. And Down insulates by trapping little pockets of air. The more air pockets you trap, the less heat you're going to lose. Aerogel works in a similar way, except instead of trapping air, Aerogel is made up of high percentages of air. The lowest density aerogels are up to 99% air, which has led some people to refer to it as frozen smoke.
Now obviously this aerogel isn't 99% air, but it is incredibly lightweight and I'm sure it's a great insulator. There's just one problem. It's incredibly brittle, which means it's not good for jackets. So how is this jacket full of it?
Well, supposedly Primaloft has found a way to fuse aerogel fibers with their already existing synthetic insulation.
And I'm going to stop right there for a second because I don't want this to sound like an ad, because it's not. On the contrary, I'm not here to promote Primaloft. I'm here to see if it's really as good as they claim.
Because Primaloft claims that their aerogel-infused cross-core insulation is 11 to 52% warmer than existing insulations, while being just as lightweight.
52% warmer than Down? There's no way.
But let's prove it. So I ordered an aerogel-infused jacket.
This thing is so thin, I just don't see how it's gonna be warmer than Down.
I weighed it and I found a Down jacket that weighed about the same amount.
Now, obviously there's more to both these jackets than just their insulation. There's material and stitching, but assuming that they both have about the same amount of material and assuming that most of their weight comes from their insulation, I think we're gonna have about as fair of a test as I can do. The only way to be 100% fair would be to tear these jackets apart and weigh their insulation separately from the other materials, which I'm not gonna do.
So assuming that they are as equal as we can get, that means that the aerogel-infused jacket should be 11 to 52% warmer than the Down jacket. But for my test, if it's even slightly warmer than the Down, I'm going to be really impressed because it's a fraction of the size.
But how do we know which one of these jackets is warmer? Well, first, we're going to have a subjective test. I'm going to spend 30 minutes in each jacket without moving to see which one feels warmer.
So I hiked in a few miles until I found a suitable place to test both the jackets. But because I was already feeling warm just from the hike, I decided to wait just a bit in my base layer until I started to feel cool.
Okay, it hasn't taken very long now that I've stopped moving, sitting here in just my base layer, to start feeling cold. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the aerogel jacket, see if it helps me feel warmer. Just put on the jacket. Very first thing I notice is I do feel warmer, which makes sense because I have on an additional layer. So now my plan is to sit here in the shade for a little bit longer, 30 minutes to an hour if I have to, and see if I ever start to feel cold, even with the aerogel jacket on. Now, I gotta say, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this thing. It feels like a jacket that you might wear around town. It does not feel like a technical jacket, which makes me think that the aerogel is just a marketing gimmick to get people who have quite a bit of money to spend money on a jacket to be like, oh yeah, well, it's a space age jacket, space technology, NASA developed it. I don't think it's actually gonna perform very well. I think here in a minute I'm gonna have to put the Down on.
I spent the next several hours switching between the aerogel and Down jackets without ever truly feeling warm, despite adding layers under the two jackets. Either these layers were not sufficient for the conditions, or I allowed myself to get too cold initially and couldn't recover. Either way, I had no definitive results.
Okay, so I think the Down feels warmer, but I'm starting to believe that this specific test, is just too subjective. And so I need something a little bit more scientific to figure out Which one is warmer?
And this is what I came up with. You may remember this freezer from my Tensor Extreme video. Well, now I've got a different use for it.
I basically made it into my own version of an R-value machine that they use for testing sleeping pads. Those machines have a hot plate and a cold plate. Both the plates are held at a constant temperature and they measure how much energy it takes to keep the hot plate warm. The more energy it takes, the colder that pad is going to feel. So with that as my inspiration, I bought a mannequin off Amazon that I named Fred.
Everyone, I want you to meet Fred.
I strapped a heating pad to his chest and I connected it to a thermostat that would try to keep it at a static temperature and plugged it into this power meter that measures just how much energy the heating pad is actually drawing. I then put Fred and the heating pad in the freezer for an hour to see how much energy each jacket needed to stay warm. The more energy needed, the less effective the insulation and the colder the jacket is going to feel. I started with the down jacket that pulled 0.025 kilowatt hours of energy and had to run the heating pad for 31 out of 60 minutes to stay warm. I then switched it out for the Aerogel jacket, trying to maintain the exact same conditions to the best of my ability, and the Aerogel jacket pulled 0.030 kilowatt hours of energy and ran for 39 out of 60 minutes. That equals about 18 to 22% difference in insulating power, which seems pretty definitive that Aerogel isn't as good as down. But just to make sure, I picked up a different Aerogel jacket from Black Diamond.
It's got a little bit of an unfair advantage because it weighs almost a pound, whereas the other two jackets were right at about 13.2, 13.5 ounces. And so it's got a little bit more insulation, or it could have a little bit more insulation in it. And I didn't have it when I was testing outdoors, but I am gonna go ahead and put it on Fred, put him in the freezer for an hour and see how it performs as compared to the down jacket.
Even with the additional weight, the Black Diamond Aerogel jacket performed even worse, pulling 0.034 kilowatt hours and ran the heater for all but 10 of the 60 minutes in the freezer. Compared to the down jacket, Black Diamond's Aerogel jacket was 30 to 43% worse at insulating despite being 12% heavier.
So then what's the conclusion between Aerogel and down? Well, pure Aerogel might be a better insulator than down, but because it's so brittle, it has to be fused with a standard synthetic insulation to make it flexible. That synthetic base just can't compete with down.
So then how can Primaloft advertise it as 11 to 52% warmer? What they're not saying is it's probably being compared to other synthetic insulations, which would make sense. If you replace 11 to 52% of the insulation with the lightest material on Earth, it's going to insulate better.
Ultimately, it seems like it's just a big marketing ploy to get people who have too much money to feel like they have a space-age jacket. But what do you think, Fred? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more like it, please check out this video right here. Like, subscribe, and do all those other things. And as always, thanks for watching.